Takes a lot of time. I was last
Have you ever heard that?
I've never heard that.
Because that's where
the
the
second half of
Oh, I've never paid attention.
patterns go.
Oh, wow.
Like,
That
looked it
is
up on Google and sure enough.
amazing.
That's for this.
In terms of
So I
its
didn't know
use.
that.
I didn't know that either. Only thing I like about Buffalo is, you know, it's supposed to be the original Buffalo wings.
Yeah.
And there's two places there that go back to obvious which one is it.
You're right.
I love the Finger Lakes and love all the water.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
now it's
You guys good? Good to start? Good? Huh?
Us, that's
Yeah.
it? We're all here?
We're all here.
Okay,
Okay, let's go.
alright. Would you like me to wear a mask?
No, you're fine.
Are you
I'm
sure?
good. I'm
Yeah.
comfortable.
Okay.
You're comfortable. I'm comfortable. What was I said?
I
With
just,
these 4 layers, I'm gonna be all right.
like I said, I have been vaccinated, but I strive to.
Likewise, but you don't know what's going on there.
I strive to be understanding.
All right, well, I think we have
But
the
thank
got the
you for that.
YouTube on and everything. We're ready to go.
All right, I'm gonna call the hearing to order. Michelle, can you please call roll?
Yes, Mr. Pahovich,
Here.
Mr. McNulty,
Here.
Mr. Bellis,
Here.
Mr. Pierce,
Here.
and Ms. Harris. We do have a quorum, and Ms. Harris is not attending this meeting.
All right, we're here tonight to discuss the rezoning application for, two rezoning applications for Evans Farm, ZON-21-05 and ZON-21-06, as well as the amendment to the Orange Township zoning resolution. Just some quick ground rules. When the board is ready for any public comment or anybody to speak, there'll be an opportunity for members to speak during the hearing. If you'd like to speak, please state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. All right. So, Michelle, do you want to go through?
Yeah, so I have a staff report for both applications. I know the application was submitted to you all in a combined form. The applicants and I discussed that thoroughly, and I think we talked to our legal counsel, and we are going to move forward with it looking as one, but we are going to be treating it as 2 separate applications for technical purposes. So I guess we'll start with the commercial area. Oh boy, I'm losing my notes now. So with the staff review, we'll talk about the development standards overall. I'm probably going to have really the applicant touch on this. We did receive a narrative from the applicant that I believe was sent out to the board members in advance, and this really summarizes all the changes that are made. I think the biggest takeaway out of this is when Evans Farm came to us in 2014-15, it was a big 300-page binder of each application, and the Evans Farm and I have been working diligently on trying to simplify it and reformat the text in a way for not only easier enforcement, but just to simplify this development. And I think the intent or the goal of this always has remained the same, to create our town center and our community identity with mix of uses. But I think it's an easier way to format that and understand the vision. And I'll have the applicant touch on that more. But I did have some staff comments in my staff review, and I did pass that along to the board members and the applicant. And we can go into those in more detail later if the board wishes to do so. But at this point, I think we can just, the chair, if you're okay with that, it's a move to the applicant and have direction.
Tony?
Good evening.
Name and address, since we don't know who you are.
My name is Tony Ironman, and this is my partner Dan Griffin of Evans Farmland Development Company. With us this evening is Kevin Kirshner, he's our engineer as well as a team member in Evans Farm. Our address is 1550 Lewis Center Road, Suite B, 43035. Just a brief couple brief things. One is, God, it feels great to be back in front of you guys after all the Zoom meetings and everything. So, thank you for your time. Last October, or last fall, let's just say last fall, we came before you and Zoom, via Zoom, and then came back, and that's where I saw Leslie's wine collection in the corner. I was very jealous and envious of it because it's quite a nice collection. When we got through the trustees' comment was approval, but they also they requested us to come in and amend our zoning text to make it far less cumbersome, and then using Michelle's text because it was very well said in her comments, to implement an easier and comprehensive format to assist in plan review and enforcement. It's also just far easier, concise format for the development as well as it is for the review and the approval process. So that being said, the trustees requested us to do this last November 16th at their approval for another amendment that we had come through. And starting right around the first year, Michelle and I started working on this, and it's got to the point that you see today, or this evening. The vision for Evans Farm is not varied. It's the exact same community we've always wanted it to be. It's the exact same community that we presented to you back in 2016, 15, 16. And it's, while the text may be tightening up a little bit or being amended slightly, and that's what it is, it's an amendment. There really aren't any changes to the vision at all. So the vision remains the same. In fact, underneath this board, underneath this print, is the first print we did once we got Berlin Township approval too. So we merged the two. It's 2017, and the changes are minimal between that 2017 plan and the 20 plan, and really the only changes were driven by the county engineer on alignment to Street B out on South Old State Road, a couple other small minor road changes all driven by the county engineer. So for the sake of, as Michelle mentioned, we probably took, there are easily 150 pages of text I checked today in the original zoning between the plain commercial and single family plain residential. In addition to that, we had numerous tabs and exhibits. Included in there were photographs of other houses and retail and office facilities and other new urbanism communities. This amendment, if you will, or replacement, doesn't have that because we have all the photographs we need sitting out there now. We were once told, we were told recently by a fellow who's a new urbanist and a developer that you no longer need to call yourself a new urbanism community because you are one. And if people don't see that, then they're never going to understand what it is. So it was quite a nice comment. For the sake of going through a process to just make sure T's are crossed and I's are dotted, and it starts to open up a discussion between us and comments or questions from you, I put together this 8-page, nothing short in Evans Farm, everything's lengthy, but this 8-page narrative of the articles of what was approved back in 2016 and how we transferred it into these mini sections, if you will. And we did not get into the minute details, and if that's what you need, we can certainly go through those. But just for the sake of starting somewhere, we can, if you have a better way you want to do it, please just jump in. As you are familiar with us, we're not very formal people. We much prefer discussion, and we think we can get a lot done in a quick manner that way. Starting at the bottom of the page one of the narrative, and we'll just go that way to start with the Article 10, Single Family Plan Residential District. Sections 1001 and 1002, there's really no impact on the text, so we didn't address that. Section 1003, 1004, and 1005, we submitted a spreadsheet, if you will. It's a 6-page spreadsheet of the permitted uses. And while it took probably 20 to 25 pages and narrowed it down to about 6, the content of those 20-some pages was intended to be incorporated into those 6 pages. Does everyone have those spreadsheets? Let's see how there's one section of spreadsheets that has 6 pages that probably were stapled as the permitted land uses. And then the other page is lot restrictions, which took all the setbacks, and, lot coverage, and building height, and lot width, and condensed it into a spreadsheet as well. We took probably 5 or 6 pages and condensed it down into a spreadsheet there. And when I say we don't take credit for all the authorization. We co-wrote this with Township staff, specifically with Michelle, and trying to make something that was easy and more manageable to review and approve. What we did is we took, there are 2 things in this 6-page spreadsheet that are new. One of them's in here and one of them we missed and we come back in and we'll add it for the next meeting. With the intent of offering another type of housing, and it came out of discussions that we had with the township on the multifamily, and also a discussion on my family growing up over off High Street near Como. There's an opportunity for us to work in some duplexes on the single family lots. And it's very much a new urbanism thing. It's another opportunity for an entry level perhaps, or even a downsized type of housing that is not, is very much would fit into the architectural standards of what we propose and what we are enforcing. So it's, but it's basically a single family scale unit that offers two units in it. You go over to Como, which is where some of my family grew up. To drive down the street, unless you counted doors on the facade, you would not be able to tell the difference between the single family and the duplex. And that's exactly what we're trying to do here. So we're proposing that. The other thing that is not in here, and I caught it afterwards, throughout the whole zoning process, and even for the last almost 5 years since, we've talked about farm markets and outdoor community markets of sorts, maybe art festivals and things like that, music festivals too. And somehow or another, it just occurred to me that we didn't include that into here. So while it's not in the text that you have, it's something I discovered long after July 14th when we submitted this. And that we would ask that as well. We can go through these one by one if you want. Explicitly start, because on the first page, I was reading with the intent of, as we're going through this, with the intent of simplicity, it became very clear to me that in planned commercial, the attached residential didn't make sense. There was a lot of gray area in there. So what I tried to do is change the title. I didn't really change the description. But it's very clear that some multifamily as a line item has first floor retail, multifamily above, which is a different use in my mind from multifamily first floor and all the way up. And they fit in different places. The retail area, we have only access to the multifamily above it's retail. There are other places, potentially over by the railroad, that we may have some 2 or 3 story units that were yet multifamily on the first floor as well. But I wanted to make sure those were separated. And that wasn't very clear in the approved text. So that's why that's the change that was made there. Those first 3 on the bottom of page 1, and the attached dwelling, which is the townhome, which is the first item on the second page. Just want to make sure, and if there's any question, we can go back to the old way. I'm just trying to be far simpler and far more clear, as requested by the trustees. And that's what Michelle and those were our marching orders. The animal care, bank use, bed and breakfast, conference center, all that pretty much as is in the previous land uses. And simply change the format to make it simpler. Next page, which is page 3, the hotel, boutique hotel, medical facilities, office warehouse, parking structure, parking surface lots. That whole page was just about identical to what was approved back in 2016. I'm thinking of it since I'm on a page that has it. There's a question from staff up at the top, the header of this, in the grade box. It says lot type 1, lot type 2, lot type 3, lot type 4. It's nothing more than a reference. I could take that line out and just say single family residential less than 90 feet. It's all it is. It's a title.
Okay.
There's no significance to it at all. And it's up to you if you want it in there or not. The next page, page 4, 6, the art sculpture, community center, community garden. All that's pretty much as it was approved as well. Page 5 to 6. Page 5 to 6, somewhere down between outdoor dining and outdoor display of materials. I thought that if it's something that the zoning commission and the trustees wanted, we could put in there the outdoor community market, just to have it as a separate line item. It's, again, to help the staff. Simplicity, we're not trying to interpret what we meant by display of materials or anything like that. It's very simple. It's a market. And that would be what I envisioned is it could be in the single family lot types 1 and 2 only in the public areas. So using the hot dog as the example, which is this area here where if you've been in there recently, it's where our post office is. And, we just put in a flag on the south end and this tree area there. We could have the outdoor festival in there if we wanted to. We don't want it on the private areas. We don't want it in people's backyards or in the alleys or anything like that, which are all private. It'd be public areas only. And the plain commercial area, types 3 and 4, would be both private. It'd just be permitted in both of those. It would all be subject to time limitations as well. So it'd be the permitted use, semicolon, yeah, I think that's a semicolon, time limited uses. And we could consider that there. And then going into page 6, really no changes to that as well. Quickly moving through the sections we've submitted, and well, let me go back to where we started. That's sections 1003 to 1005, and I promise it'll get faster. 1006, the procedure section in the zoning text. Because we are simplifying, because we're getting rid of a lot of, for example, the photographs of the other houses in the other communities. We probably had 20 photographs in there. Those are all gone. All the tabs are gone. in there, in the text, somewhere in there, we had reference to aids that can track materials, and we've taken that out. The quality that we're demanding and the quality that's out there now sets the standard. And we're not, we know enough, and we have our town architects knowing enough. They know they're smarter than we are of what's quality and what's not. And at the end of it all, prior to occupancy, one of the proposals in here is prior to the occupancy permit being issued, the town architect will review for compliance and to make sure. And it's something that we've discovered as we've evolved it. We didn't lack a hammer to get everyone to comply, but it was work. This just makes it easy. And it provides the township the assurance that the zoning permit that was submitted, the quality of the architecture that was promised is being delivered, and that's probably the best thing we can do for the township as well as for Evans Farm.
And it lets us be the enforcer prior to you guys having to look through it. And so that'll help us as well.
Dan, can you state your name and address? Sorry.
Introducing.
Oh, you did? Oh, okay. Never mind.
Twins.
Oh, twins. Got it. Apologize.
That's Dan Griffin from Evans Farm.
Thanks.
It's nice to meet a few of the new faces here.
Working through section 1006, there are parts of the procedure that are incorporated into the text of the architectural, the lighting, the trails, and those are in these sections entitled site amenities, landscape, open space, fencing and walls, general development codes. And lastly, and it was one of the requests to the township, and it's back in October, November, is the lot classifications. And back when we came in at the beginning, we had specified 40-foot lots, 45-foot lots, 50-foot lots, 55 all the way through. And with each of those, we had a certain quantity of lots in each category. And not realizing what a clerical time that would be to try to keep track of it. You have a 45-foot lot, but you have a side yard setback on the corner, it becomes 51, so is it a 45-foot lot or is it a 50-foot lot? We made the commitment a long time ago that there are 946 single-family lots, and we're going to have 149.5, don't hold me to the exact number, but 149.5 acres of open space. We aren't requesting any change to those. The open space is going to remain the open space. We're not changing the open space acreages. 946 single-family lots are there. Added, and we've already brought it up, duplex lots is an addition. However, we're not changing the open space. What this would do in getting rid of, I can't remember the exact correlation of how many 40-foot lots there were, and how many 45s, and how many 50s. We still have 946 lots. And how those are divided in between the lot sizes, we're requesting that be removed, and Michelle and staff were asking for that to be removed too. The market's driving it, and back when we initiated this back in 2015, I had no vision at all, no expectation at all that a 40 to 45 foot lot would support a $700,000 house, but it is, they are. I'm talking to builders now, and they're saying a 40 to 45 foot lot probably starts in high 4s or low 5s, and which just blows me away. That was before the lumber issues and the skyrocketing of lumber came up. We still have a demand, and we love the demand for the larger lots, and it adds a variety of architectural style that we can't capture on a 40-foot or 45-foot lot. And there's a house going in over, I could look at Adam or I could look at Christine and ask them the architectural styles, and they would tell me immediately. I'm still being schooled on. I got my books. I'm reading my books, but I don't know. I don't have the styles memorized yet. I can tell you some are craftsmen, but I can tell you what a craftsman is. We have one that's sort of a Victorian, and that kind of snuck through, but it meets the standards, but barely. But larger lots allow for a different style of home, and there will be, and there still are demands for the large lots. We're selling, we found probably over the last 6 months, we've sold mostly larger lots, which is great. But we're still have a demand for the small lots. So we don't see taking 946 lots and making them all 40s and 45s and 50s. So that's one of our requests as well. Section 1007 is development standards, and probably the easiest thing to start on is the general development totals. And we have in there, and it's one of our handouts, it's the single sheet, not handout, it's just the middle, the single sheet. One thing we found, and this was unexpected as well, the COVID, God bless it, changed our market radically, and all of our office demands disappeared because everyone was working from home. Our plan was always to have multiple stories in the retail area. I can't say it was all planned for 4 stories, which is that's the 50-foot maximum, but we were planning on that. And part of that, as when on Market Street, which is really the core of our retail and our commerce area, was to have offices. And it's pretty apparent the offices aren't going to come back for a while. So what we talked to the trustees, we talked to various people in the community, including some of the zoning commission members. And the response back we got was that we should consider bringing part of the retail area. Yeah, I feel it's my plan. You don't need to know. You need to go to the restroom. Part of they asked, the advisors asked us to come into some compliance with parts of the 23-quarter overlay, which allows for 8 units to an acre. If you go through all the different criteria, you can increase your densities up to 10. And that's what we wrote down here as a maximum number of density, right? It's 10 units an acre. It doesn't change our retail uses at all on the first floor. It doesn't change how we plan anything along there. It's simply using and allowing us to go up more than 1 story of retail along Market Street and through the rest of the community, because the office isn't going to support it for a long time. So that's that. It's never easy to come in before you guys and ask for substantially higher densities, but just in truth, that's the reason that's being requested.
Do I need to apologize?
No.
Right now, we're going to do the questions.
I just said, yeah, these restrooms. Or needed a glass of drink water out there.
I had surgery Thursday.
He's not supposed to be picking heavy things up. He keeps carrying these. The one other thing in the development standards that we're requesting an amendment to is the alley width. Working with Township, working with county engineer, the alley width we're proposing is 15 feet instead of 20 feet. City of Delaware, that's the standard alley width. 20 feet we found is almost as costly as a public road, and it doesn't really provide you a public space versus a private space. Basically, you're double loaded on a house. You have traffic in both directions and a lot of activity in both directions. I can't quote him exactly because I'd have to be believed, but an alley is where Andres Guani once told us the alley is where all the garbage goes, and only used a more descriptive term, garbage. And that's really where it goes. 15 feet is plenty of space with an 18 to 20 foot head-in parking space outside of the garage to allow yourself to back out, to move and travel back and forth. In talking with fire department about it, they have not raised any issues with going from 20 to 15 either. So that's one of the things we're requesting. Current section 1008 and 1009, single family cluster housing and golf course community, we had nothing in that, so it's not applicable to anything we're doing here. Article 21 in the single family and residential, 21.00 is general, so there's nothing there. 21.01 parking is in our new parking section. The primary difference between what was approved in 16 and what was approved, or what's proposed tonight, is that we're taking the shared parking area and we're extending it east-west. Before it was stopping at Pike and Meadows at Lewis Center to the east. We're extending it all the way to the railroad track. We're proposing to extend it all the way to the railroad track. Simply because the uses are continuing as we see them. There is, and staff found it, I appreciate them finding it. 2006 is my typo error, and I'm going to fight. I keep telling people I'm going to fire my typist. It was approved that every single family house has 4 parking spaces, 2 in a garage and 2 outside. We're fine with that. Somehow or another, I put mentally I had 2 in the garage and I forgot the 2 outside. But so the text that I have in there is 2 parking spaces per single family, and it's supposed to be 4. And we'll stick with the 4. We're not trying to change anything. Height limitations that are in lot restrictions spreadsheet, which is the other 11x17 that's got a lot of numbers on it. We can go through those as we go. The height limitation is 35 in single family, which is permitted and is approved in 16. And it's the same in our proposal, and 50 feet is the maximum in the zoning text. It was approved, and it's the same as, there you go. That's the page. Structure separation 2103. In our text, in our spreadsheet, we have 0 feet of separation between the commercial buildings, and that's because we were planning on having attached buildings. I think what we probably need to do is have a 0 for attached and then have a separate number beneath that for detached units, and we'll do that. These are as much coming out of staff's comments. So it's not like we're out ahead of it, they're catching us. 2104, sanitary sewer requirements, nothing's changed. We have central sewer provided by Delaware County Sanitary Department. Everyone's happy. Section 2105, water impoundments. About a month ago, Dan was in here and we've incorporated that text, I assume that text into this. So that's all it is.
I would just double check that. I didn't think it was the same. So
it isn't in motor.
I think just if we can copy that, whatever the amendment we did in, yeah. I didn't see in there.
We'll get with you on that.
Okay.
Landscaping, 2106. The landscape section that's entitled Landscape Open Space, Fencing and Walls incorporates at least 3 sections in the existing approved zoning text of landscape and merges them all together. We got rid of the spreadsheet that had all the approved trees in it, and I don't think the township has any preference on what. I'm being very politically sensitive here. I don't know if you guys want to know what kind of trees are in there or not. As a landscape architect, I'm not going to put in a dog tree, a silver maple or something like that. if we want to reference the city of Westerville or city of Dublin's approved tree list, that's fine. But we got rid of the tab that had the acceptable trees. And we'll do whatever you want to do on that. Similar to the landscaping, the open space, we consolidated, I think, 4 different places, merged them all into this text as well. And this is something that Michelle and I, landscape, open space, fencing and walls, we spent more time on this than anything. We got rid of open space by open space and how it was going to be maintained, who was going to own it, how many times it was going to be mowed per year, kind of thing. As I said before, we're committed to the 149.5 acres of open space. The plan is generally how it's been developed to this point, and it's going to remain generally developed as in that fashion. So the acreages and the open space locations are going to be right there.
Are all the trails and sidewalks going to be remaining the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good question. One of the comments that was a good comment and something you caught when I looked it up. In our fencing and walls text, we have a 3 feet and a 4 foot fence section. And what we failed to do was reference it that this 3 foot fencing is for the single family planned residential, and the 4 foot is for the planned commercial. The reason we have 4 foot fencing in the planned commercial is so people have a little privacy if they're out on the sidewalk out in front, and they can sit down and they have whether it's fencing or whether it's a planter or whatever, what have you. There's a little bit of a privacy, it's hard to be privacy in the middle of a public area, but you have a little bit more intimate seating area in the areas out in front and the sidewalk that are fenced in.
And will the 5 foot fence requirement remain the same for swimming pools?
Yes.
Okay.
That's in the single family side.
Okay.
2107 repealed, and that's listed that way in the zoning text. 2108 floodplain regulation, nothing's changed on that. 2109 is the setback regulation, and that's the spreadsheet here. We were able to take a number of pages and consolidate it down and be probably every bit as precise as we were in the multiple pages. We will go into the commercial site and be a little bit more specific on that. If there are any questions on that, we'd be happy to discuss them with you. 2110, requirements for non-residential uses abutting residential districts. We submitted nothing in 16, and we were equal to the task. 2111, installation of satellite dishes. Those were in the architectural standards previously, and they're in the architectural standards in the proposed text as well. Lighting in 2112, similar to what the landscaping in the open space were. They're referenced in several sections, both in 21 as well as section 10. We've tried to consolidate them all into site amenities. The only thing that we proposed is specific to the signage above the doors and around the doors, blade signs and the doors, the signage above. Because a lot of our retail area is not going to have, well, we're not allowed to have backlit signs. We're asking for directional signs instead of just downlighted signs. And if there's a blade sign on the corner that's fairly vertical, 15, 20 feet, one downlit sign, one light downlighted on that is inadequate. So we may have to come around the sides and go sideways too. So it's, we're asking for directional signage with cutoffs. We understand the long time desire for downlighting in the township, and we tried, and we're still working on the dark skies initiative. It's simply that some of the things around the fronts of the retail areas, we're going to have a hard time lighting signage if we can't get directional signage that goes sideways. And I don't think we have anything proposed uplighting at all. So if we want to get rid of uplighting, we can do that to say directional. 2113 is display of property address. We have nothing there. And then section 2114, temporary uses, are in the permitted land uses as well. We have, Michelle and I worked hard to try to consolidate that down and make it as specific as we could. That's the end of the single family and residential. So, it's completely up to you guys if you want to get up and stretch or plow on.
Well, I think we can at least address any comments specifically to single family now, and then we can move on to the commercial. Tony, I just have a quick question, or anybody for that matter. So the introduction of the duplex houses, I understand that you already have a set of architectural standards in place and a community architect that's reviewing all these. You mentioned a specific look or style that you're going for those, and I was wondering, because I didn't see anything in here, will there be additional, I guess, language that would be added to help set, if the duplex, and I'm not as familiar with the area you were referencing where you said you were going for that look, but if you said that they look like almost like if you're not looking at them close enough, it's hard to even see that it's a duplex. You might think it's just a single family home. However that's achieved, whether the garages are on the side or one's on the side or whatever is done to do that, to achieve that, is that something that will be handled in the text, or do you plan on having the architect, go out, basically dictate how that's driven by the developer, architects, whoever's
we can do a
work on
little
this?
bit of both.
Okay.
I think I see where you're going, and there has to be some control. Yeah.
Yeah, may I? Dennis and I were originally, way back on, part of this zoning, and there was a discussion of duplexes. And part of the problem with duplexes, and I think why the language was not included, was the township has this idea of what a duplex is, and it doesn't like it. Because I think, as Adam brought up, there weren't architectural standards.
Right.
The garages were out front, all the doors were out front, it was clear they were
Cars on blocks
duplexes.
are out front too, yeah.
I'm not going into that, but it's that there weren't architectural standards for those duplexes. So they were clearly duplexes, they looked run down. That was why there was a large discussion of that. So if there are architectural standards where, the garages are in the back and it looks like a single family from the front, and if, I'm familiar with the building type you're talking about, having seen it in New Orleans, where my family's from. It could be like a double shotgun, a double quad, all sorts of stuff. Or you could have a flat one on the ground floor, another unit on the second floor. But in all of them, it's not like there's a whole row of garages out front. Right. It's all hidden, so it's not obvious. It looks like a single family home from the front, and it blends in with the rest of the neighborhood. So that if you do have, like Adam said, architectural standards, I think it would make people in the township a lot more comfortable and accepting of duplexes.
But you've already mentioned the garages are in the back, close to the alleys, right?
Yeah.
So, and you've already described the neighborhood I'm quite familiar with. I grew up there as well, Como and Clintonville. So I know exactly where that is. The garages are in the back. That's what you have intended here. In architectural standards, I think that's fine. What they're referring to is some of the more modern style duplexes, the garage in front. You know where we're headed with that. That was not a good thing, but I think where you were headed here with this design here from Clintonville and that older style, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
There are some lots that are not serviced by alleys though, so the garages are more
But
towards
even
the
then,
front.
Even then, the garages have to be behind the unit.
Behind the front building line, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But regardless, we're not amending our architectural standards to accommodate a duplex or anything like that. Como is Norwell is rich with all kinds of a variety of housing. If you using two other communities, Stapleton, which is out in Denver, Colorado, if you ever get the chances, it's monstrously large. It's 5 times the size of Evans Farm. It's the old Stapleton Air Force Base. They've kept the control tower as one of their public space icons, which is kind of cool. I'm not sure how you would torn it down anyhow, but it's part of the park and it's really neat. But they've created townhomes that are on corners, or not townhomes, duplexes on corners. And if you look at the Bob Webb model on the parade lot that we have at Evans Farm, it's almost identical to that, where you have the front door and the front porch is one. You have a smaller front door on the side that if you didn't know better, you'd just say it's part of the same house. Norton Commons, which is down in Louisville, didn't take that formal approach, but they took a house that's more, the frontage is very long and very architecturally, they did it very well. They created 2 units, but it doesn't show as 2 units. And using Como as an example, I have a family that grew up there, cousins grew up there. Their parents moved, once they got married, they moved into what is the second duplex. And they started having kids, and they're good Irish Catholics, so we had a bunch of them. And they moved out of the duplex, and they moved down the street to a single family home until all the kids moved out. And then they moved back to the duplex again after all the kids were gone. And that's the value of the duplexes, is you, instead of having to move out of what they spent the last 25 years in with their family, they get to stay in their community. They just move, a few doors down. And that's one of the things that we've seen going around to all these different new urban communities, is folks move within the community, but that's home. And that's something that we've been without in Delaware County for a long time. So.
I mean, my question about this, I heard you mention higher density and the 23 overlay project. Does 23 overlay project touch this?
No.
No.
That's on the southwest corner of the code.
And you mentioned higher density. Is that something that's going to occur, or maybe?
Well, what we're proposing is because we don't have the demand for the office use, we don't have anything to go above the retail across Market Street. And we need, coming in Evans Farm Drive, and the plan's already finished. Buildings 1 and 2 are on the right as you enter into building 1. You go to building 2, building 3 and building 4, the plans are finished. And as soon as buildings 1 and 2 are finished, buildings 3 and 4 start. In between buildings 3 and 4 is Market Street, that intersection. And Market Street is the key, that's the center part of the retail area. And without any office space, it's all going to be 1-story retail, so we're going 4 stories on one side to the main part of the house.
Anticipating apartments for that space?
Some sort of condos or apartments or something, yeah.
I think all of us already expected when we saw this from the beginning that we're going to see you often enough for changes to be made. We all understood that, and I really like what's done here. Thank you very much, Michelle. You guys have done a great job, because in my opinion, this may become the model for lots of what we're doing. Great job. Absolutely great job. And I'm also wondering, does this simplify things for you going forward?
Tremendous.
Yes, because as those changes we've already heard something we've already seen because of the offices going away. We know that COVID, and you're right, that's gonna be a long time with forever coming back, and who knows when that is. What else do you see coming as you take a look at that may need to adjust, modify as time moves on? What else have you, because I'm sure you've been looking forward at that. And thinking, okay, what do we need to think about next?
No. Yeah, who knows? My brother has been with JLL for 43 years. He's the oldest employee they have at this point, and he always tells me 2 years ahead of time, here's where society's going. We've done these studies. I'm like, great. I think this gives us flexibility to move with the changes. I love the idea of making sure we hit all market segments, because that's what we're building, the village. And I'm pretty excited that someday, hopefully, the Orange Township Town Hall will be there in the middle. We've always wanted that, and I don't know where you guys are. I'm sure you'd love to be in the middle of Evans Farm because it's your town center. I don't know, other than the flexibility, I don't know if we, in 12 years of planning, he's done a great job of, who would have seen COVID, right? Who would have seen it? And frankly, in 2 years, you don't know. We don't know what will happen. The market might come back and it might be off. I think it's just sticking with the vision and the architecture, and then fluctuate, not having to, every time we figure something out, come in for them. I think that's just what this does. It really cleans up for me and Tony and you guys as well. It cleans up the enforcement side. It cleans up when somebody looks at our standards and our guidelines. They're all in one location.
Yeah.
Like the landscaping and fencing, it was in 7 or 8 different sections. So you couldn't, our people couldn't give somebody a quick answer. So I don't know.
From a single family perspective, we had Mike Watkins come in at the very, very beginning, and he started writing zoning text, or architectural text. And he had, I remember because it was one of those things that he knew what he was talking about, and he got on pretty bad. Because everything was going to be white, and it was going to be, he was limiting it to like 2 or 3 architectural styles for the homes. And I remember no being the first answer and hell no being the second answer. Yeah, excuse my French, but it was, we have a pretty extensive architectural range, and there's Frank Lloyd Wright always said that, I'm not an architect, I'm a landscape architect, but doctors are lucky they get to bury their mistakes. Architects can plant shrubs. And having been to, and there's a place out, if you go to Stapleton in Denver, north of Denver, about an hour, Prospect Village, it's in Longmont. Longmont is a perfect example of where a railroad and a dry gulch meet. And Prospect Village is out there. And it's phenomenal, the urbanism community. There's every architectural style you can imagine. It puts us to shame. Some of the architectural styles work very, very nicely, and some don't. But people still accept it because the scale of the architecture, even though it may not be my favorite, it works.
Yeah.
And it's still very much oriented towards the resident and the pedestrian. Vehiculars on the back side or behind it one way or another. They have a lot of driveways in that community as well. But it still works. And that and Stapleton, the two of those together, Stapleton just, you can't have that many Victorian houses with that many Italian Renaissance houses. So they have every architectural style known to man. And some that have not been known to man, I suspect. They work. And it allows us a lot of flexibility without limiting us to what Mike was trying to pigeonhole us into 3 or 4 styles, which to me would have become a very dull place. And there, when someone will come in and ask for X style of house. I get to see almost every style of house that comes in. And my first reaction is, God, I will never live in that house. But you know what? Someone else will. And someone else will call it home. And that's pretty cool. And so it allows us a lot of flexibility and adaptability. Hopefully, I'm never going to say we'll never be back because we like meeting with you, especially in person. But hopefully this simplification and consolidation of the zoning text makes it a little bit easier for all of us.
I think moving the alley size from 20 to 15, and so you don't have two roads of two-way traffic, I see the reality and practicality of that.
And I think it gives us more, I mean, including it gives us more room to get it, pull into your garage and leave the car outside your garage and not hang in, because a lot of the guys that push their houses, you know, like where I live on the main drag there, they push their house so far back. If I pull my truck in the garage, it's like, how close to the alley is it? I'd rather have that actually.
Because you create the same width, you'll have two-way traffic.
Yeah. What is, you know, let me ask you guys, I mean, you've been through Evans Farm, you've lived the growth of it, and started to see what it's become. What do you think? Is there any things that you'd like to see done there that you know, are we missing anything?
No, it's an awesome community. I think
I think you made the right call in not limiting the architectural styles and the paint colors to just a handful. It would have become very monotonous. One thing I do appreciate is that, one, you have a variety of different styles. Doesn't matter what they are as long as they fit on the lot and they meet the setbacks and the height limitations. And same with paint colors. It's nice that you can do a variety. You're not limited to the all white, which seems to be very popular, or gray. But that it's nice to see someone with, you know, a bright front door, which actually in some cases is historic. So it's nice that.
If you bring up the paint color, if there's one complaint from the residents of Evans Farm, and it's not attacking anyone in particular, it's just in Hardy Plank and Smart Siding, they now finish off painting in the plant. And they have about 9 colors to choose from, I'm guessing. I've seen samples. They keep changing them, but
It depends which but your base one, you have like 9, 10 colors to choose from. You can also get it primed and painted any color you want.
oh yeah, that costs more.
That costs more, just
The
like
samples,
if you get
you
the
just got
extended palette.
Yes.
You can tell the sample colors because they're all out there. And I've had residents come up to me, and one of the first folks came in and said, I have a problem. And certainly their problems are our problems, so we want to know what they are. What is it? Well, I painted my house this dark gray, kind of a slate gray. Looks gorgeous. Yeah, but there are 2 houses down at the end of the street that are the exact same color. And you said no houses will be the exact same house. I said, they're not the house. That house there is Italian Renaissance, and this one's Craftsman, and yours is whatever. I said, the reason, we can't control it, if someone built your house and built the exact same color house and the exact same house, and we prohibit it. But no, we can't control the colors. We're not getting into that level of control. It's just not where we are.
Yeah.
But it's great fun when if you haven't been there in the last couple of weeks, up on Linden, as you go up to the post office and turn left, there's a bunch of spec houses, and Linden is starting to look really, really good because the houses on one side are starting to come in. They're just starting construction on the other side. I'm looking for a color, maybe the color, light blue color in your shirt. Someone painted their house that color. And every time there's a red house or a blue house, yes, yes. And someone's like, can you believe that blue house? Yes. Yeah, someday I hope they're all that color. There's a community up in Michigan called Cherry Hills. It's a Duane Plater Zyber community, New Orleans community. And they intentionally took one street and every color in the rainbow. And I'm like, I don't think I would want to live in a lilac purple house, but someone did. And you know what? In the context of that whole street, it's kind of cool. I wouldn't want every street like that, but good for them. So
Yeah.
it's diversity and adaptability is what we're trying to get to, so we don't have to keep bothering you guys as much. We'd rather meet you for a drink somewhere.
Can I ask a question or a clarification? So you say that we're sticking with the 946 single-family lots. We're just sort of moving them around however the market tells us, correct? If I understand that correctly.
Yes and no. I mean, if you're familiar with Duane's approach to new urbanism, he has the transect. And he goes from the denser areas to the less dense areas.
Yeah.
We're pretty much holding to that. So
Okay.
the smaller lots are going to be still on the west along by, I told Andres, I said, I'm in the middle of a heck of an experiment. I said, what do you mean? I said, well, your transects always go straight. I said, mine goes north and then takes a right angle and goes east. I said, I realize it doesn't work, but it is going to work. And what it is, this is the dense area over here. It comes up to the oval and then turns this way and it becomes less dense. We're pretty much following that pattern. It's just, there's going to be a time where we're going to either have a demand for more large lots or more small lots. And we have to be able to respond to that.
So then my question is the 100 duplex lots, where do they fall into that? Are they part of the 946 lots that you're just setting aside 100 to be duplexes? Is it an additional to the
We're proposing them
946?
as addition.
So where are they coming from? Are they coming from the planned commercial and moving over to the single family? Or, I guess that's what I'm confused about. If we're not changing green space and we're not really changing lot sizes, all of a sudden, poof, we have 200 extra units, 100 extra lots. And I've tried to, in my mind, figure out where they're coming from. And I'm sure you figured this out, but I'm not there yet.
Yeah, that was similar to my question.
I just thought when you asked me that question, the duplex does allow us to be sensitive to values, right? Because as we see what happened with the lumber and everything going up, and now you can't get laborers, you can't get supply, we're seeing, the house that somebody could afford 400 or 390, now you can't, because the builders 500, 525. So it has started to push this into a, wait a minute, this is $1 million something. That's not what we want to accomplish. So the lots would stay the same, but we'd end up getting additional units because of the duplex, but we wouldn't have more lots. We put those 2 units. Now these
Our proposal is more lots. What we're planning is, we reverse this.
we don't reverse anything.
The demand for the 100 footers and the 90 footers and the 80 foot lots is not where we thought it was going to be.
Okay.
So as we grow from and the duplexes were intended to be around the oval area where there's a little bit of density.
Mm-hmm.
As you go to the east, we start with 45s and 50s instead of 70 foot lots. And we are keenly aware we may not get to 1,046 lots.
Okay.
But we have seen on Maple Street where the 100 foot lots are, we still have lots available where we're pushing section 6 now, the small lots.
So you're planning on adjusting, based on the lot size. This may be for a single family home, but the rest of it, in and of itself, you could put a duplex on there. Is that the way that translates, or is that what you're talking about?
The duplexes together, just as they did on Como and as they've done in other communities. It would make a nice transition in my mind between say the oval and the multifamily around the oval, back to the single family.
Okay.
So you would be doing it similar to like the Dewani concept where you might go from more dense to less dense.
Yeah.
And those duplexes would be part of that progression
Yeah,
from
the trains.
multifamily to large single-family
Yeah.
lots. They're just in that, from the street, they might look larger than your standard single-family because you gotta get in the extra
Right.
unit. Okay.
But the decision on that, you're asking for the permission to do that, right? But the decision on whether or not we're gonna do X number hasn't been made, right? Or, yeah, okay.
Yeah, these amendments include permitting the use of a duplex and an additional 100 lots.
Okay.
Okay, and then the duplexes would be topped at 100 lots.
Right.
So that you have a potential of 100 two-family units or 200 extra units.
Right.
Okay.
But where did the 100 lots come from again?
We're proposing.
That's
to add
new.
those. Those are new.
Okay,
Yeah, so basically, my understanding what you're doing is that the extra wide over 90-foot lots, if they're not going as single-family lots,
Mhm.
some of those would then become duplexes or
Yeah, and we have to have a,
reallocating.
we have to have a little vision out front to make sure that we don't, what I don't want to do is end up with duplexes in the middle of 100-foot wide lots, you know?
That's what I'm getting at. That's why I'm asking those questions. Or you don't want to end up with an extra 5-10 feet here and there that's not fully thought out.
Right.
I think overall it just gives the applicant or the developer more flexibility.
Mhm.
Just, and this should, I mean, being that you guys know us pretty well, it shouldn't surprise you that on my table right now, the refinement of everything up to the townships north from it. And we're starting to move east already, so we're probably 3 to 5 years out, but we're already studying that. We're taking into account the markets and demands. We're talking with the builders and trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to do this? And figuring out lot sizes and things like that. So we have not, at least I haven't, I don't have a plan yet that shows a duplex lot on it at all. We did not assume for a minute that we were going to get approval, we're hoping. But if you do approve it, then I go back to the drawing board and start over. But that's okay.
Any other comments on single family before we move on
Kind
to?
of bounced a little bit into commercial.
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
But we're not, as you know, we're not limited to only.
Yeah.
So we go back and forth.
just one more thing on the duplex. So, if I understand this note correctly, so the duplex, you don't know if they're gonna be side by side or if they're gonna be upper and lower yet, is that
As of right now.
correct? But it could be both of them.
Could be.
Yeah. Do you, is the thought that it will be a mix, or is the thought that maybe we'll decide, okay, we're gonna do side by side, and that's what we should expect for all 100, or is it, hey, it could be 50, 75 of this and 25 of that, or?
If I were a betting man, and I know better than to do this, but I would say that I'm guessing that they're probably side by side. Though down in Clintonville, there are a number of them, especially around North High School, that are top and bottom.
Yeah.
The reason I would guess side by side is they tend to be a little bit more handicap friendly. And when you have the upper lower, you kind of limit your market and
Well, actually, it's the other way around. So if you have the top and bottom, your bottom unit can be accessible, your top
That's
one
true.
will be not.
That's
If
true.
you have them side by side, only your ground floor is accessible.
Yeah, that's true.
We've done, I've
Yeah.
done them before, or fourplexes.
Yeah, I thought.
So it depends on,
Yeah.
how you look at it, or, you know, I also, for corner lots, your front and side, having two fronts, one on either street also.
Mhm.
I think the only concern I have is sort of what Adam touched on, is just to make sure that there are standards and architectural guidelines that go with the duplexes. So Orange Township is comfortable with duplexes and they're not mimicking what we have currently.
If it were to help, and it's not intended as a submission, But this is our architectural standards that we use to enforce. We review everything on now. The reason it isn't submitted to the township is because, not because of exclusivity or privacy or anything. It's simply the township's not in a position they want to enforce these. If you guys want a copy personally, I'd be happy to send you a file with them. It's good stuff. We amended it in 19, mostly not because of any content, but just redundancy. And there was nothing more fun than I would do it again in a heartbeat if you guys wanted to do it. Walking down the street with architects and they're sitting there looking at these houses that are being built. They're like, ooh, look. And it just, I mean, it's not where I've been trained to get my cosmic giggle from, but it's something that's really cool to walk down the street with someone that knows what you're looking at and saying, yeah, it's, I can look at it and say, yeah, I like it. Yeah, I've seen this before in other communities, but to understand the design and the thought behind it and the process behind it, walking around with architects doing that is just fun. It's just a moment. But
Just a real quick question. So that is you use that to enforce the standards and so forth. How often do you deviate from that, or is there a request to deviate? Okay.
Very rarely.
Okay.
I hate to say this, but it's probably the truth. We deviate from it when a builder makes a mistake.
Okay. Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I got you.
There's a house on Poplar, and if you drive down Poplar, you'll see it. And they missed the height of the first floor by a foot.
Okay.
It's the only house in there that missed the first floor height by a foot. And then the front, and it was an architectural mistake that no one caught. And then the front porch is short a foot in depth too, so we had to extend that out. It still meets all the township zoning.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all setbacks and everything.
Yeah.
It just didn't meet ours.
Okay.
But, and that's a good example of where, if you were in Dublin or New Albany, they'd probably make you tear it down.
Wow.
We can't do that. Well, we could,
Yeah.
but we won't, probably.
Yeah.
Especially if we know the intent of the builder. And we knew it was an honest mistake. So that in that instance, that's probably the last one we've had in a long time.
Okay.
Is the variance from the standards. And even then, he came back and he made it look good. Because it looks different.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Good question.
Diversity architecture.
Or if we said we know we make enough mistakes that we want to cover.
So Tony, do you want to go through the commercial,
Yeah.
plan commercial and just touch on the ones that have changed? And
We can move there.
I mean, yeah, some of these are similar in
Yeah.
nature.
In section, article 14, plain commercial office district, section 1401 and 1402, there's nothing changed. 1403, 1404, 1405 are the permitted uses and temporary uses and everything. That's in the spreadsheet that we've already gone over once. If I'm going too fast, we're going to stop and go into detail, let me know. Probably the one thing that we've already mentioned is the outdoor community market that isn't in there, but I'd like to add it. It's up to you guys if we get approved or not, but we see it as something that is, we've been getting a lot of questions about for the open air markets. 1406, the procedure, much like the single family, we got rid of the tabs, we got rid of the references to executive track. The one thing we added in here, and this is working with Michelle and her staff, and it helps, I think it's a mutual benefit for both sides. In order to issue a zoning permit, the township office will require an approval letter from the town architect. And that's at the very beginning before construction is made. At the end of the process, the hammer is that the town, in order to get my occupancy permit as a builder or as a homeowner, you need to have a town architect letter that says, yes, We're not going to certify setbacks and stuff, that's the township. But from an architectural standpoint, yes, we did what we said we were gonna do from a landscape plan. Yes, we did what we said we were gonna do, and the town architect has to sign off on that. And that's kind of, in my mind, that's the best hammer. It's a soft hammer, but it's a very effective hammer to force compliance with the plans that were submitted and were promised to be built. So that's probably the biggest change in 1406. It's just an addition. And in our text, it's the first two items at the top of the text in architectural standards. Nothing we were talking about the rest. 1407 development standards. Again, lot types 3 and 4 are simply titles to describe the area around the oval in the Lewis Center retail area. Setbacks are pretty much the same. Signage is one of those issues, and we just got Jeffrey's comments like right before I left home, so I really didn't have a chance to go through them. If our target in regards to the signage, especially in the retail area, and that's really where signage is really critical. If you go through State Street, Westerville, that's what our target is. The city of Worthington has a similar streetscape. In my mind, it's not quite as ornamental and entertaining. Bridge Street is nice too, but it's not quite there. But State Street, they have the blade signs, they have the wall-mounted signs, they have the monument signs, they have the awning signs, they have the sign, A-frames, everything, window signs, whether it's etched glass or gold leaf or painted or whatever, they have all the signs. And our approved signage package says we are allowed 3 signs per unit. Doesn't say size, doesn't say anything like that. So we kind of took those 3 out. And as part of the town architect, we have the opportunity to look at that and say, you need more or you need less. You know, for heaven's sake, you can't fit any more signs in this building. So that's what our signage is in a very simple nutshell. Track coverage standards remain the same as previously approved. 75% of the overall plain commercial district should be its maximum impervious coverage. It's not a per lot kind of thing. Our engineers keep track of the impervious coverage over the entire site. At the end of it all, they're going to say yes or no, we meet it. And if we get to the last phase and we exceed it, then we can't do it. So we're much as we're looking at ahead on the single family markets and how it's all going to relate, we're also doing the same thing for the commercial. It's something we take very seriously. And we also know that the county engineer is not going to sign off on anything more than that too, because we'll blow up our storm basins. General development standards, section 21-0, there's nothing, section 20, I have a duplication there, just another mistake. 21-01 parking, we already talked about shared parking between the railroad tracks and Meadows, Lewis Center, and then up in the Oval, we'll do a standard parking requirements. Height limitation, we've not changed anything. It's on the one spreadsheet of 50-foot maximum. We worked with the trustees before on buildings 1 and 2, and the height is measured at the middle of the slope of the flat roof. It's not really flat, it's 0.5% or percent, whatever that is. And we go to the center of it. So maybe an inch or 2 higher on the high end, but it's an inch or 2 lower on the downside too, but its average is 50 foot, 49 foot, 11.5 inches. Section 2103, 2104, there's no change. We'll work with the township on providing structure separation for non-attached units. 2105 water impoundments. don't plan on having any pools in the fronts or side yards in the plain commercial area. So I don't think we'll have any worry there. Landscaping similar to single family, we merged several sections into that. I'm trying to remember where I read it. Someone was requiring in a different development 30-foot separation between street trees. 30 feet is way too close, and especially in a retail area. We're basically creating a forest. We're trying to create a State Street or Sandusky Street up in Delaware. We didn't limit ourselves to that. Again, it's part of this town architect's approval of the site plan and the architecture. Section 21-07 is repealed. There was nothing on that floodplain regulation. There's no change to that. Setback regulations are section 21-09, and that's back to that one-page spreadsheet that shows all the setbacks and the height and the lot coverage. Requirements, there's really no changes to that. 21-10 requirements for non-residential uses abutting residential districts. The only place that occurs is in the meadows of North Center, and you have easily a 50-foot setback between their community and where our retail starts. They actually have the buffer on our property, so we'll charge them for that. 21-11, the installation of satellite dishes. It's in the architectural standards with the cable, with pretty quick cable that's in there. I doubt if we have any, but we have controls in place in case we do. The lighting, the only thing in lighting that we're really focused on in respect to the plain commercial, other than safe pedestrian corridors and parking areas, is the lighting on the signage. We already talked about that. 21-13, display of property address. We've not changed anything, and there's nothing to address that in that beginning. And then 21-14, the permitted uses. Those are in the spreadsheet as well, and I don't think we've changed anything as far as temporary uses go. With that, I already corrected, I've got the staff reports. The only thing is, Dan and I were talking, Dan pointed it out, I'm not sure if it's a rezoning case or an amendment case at the top, but we're only asking for an amendment. We're not rezoning. When the township trustees asked us to come in and do this, they asked us to come in with a PUD, which would take a full-blown rezoning, and quite honestly, we didn't have the stuff for it in very simple terms. So what we tried to do was, as much as we could with staff and with you guys, talking with you and the trustees, we tried to consolidate this as much as we could while still keeping the integrity of two applications, make it a single document as a mixed-use document. As long as we're clear on that and all of our legal friends are happy with it, we can work with you guys in any way you want it to be done. We elected not to do the PUD. You know, there was questions whether legally we could. We just decided not to, not even to consider it. So it's an amendment. The proposed text that we're doing, we see as a replacement for the zoning text, getting rid of 150 pages of text plus whatever illustrations and everything, and getting it down to 30 or 40 pages. But there's 30 or 40 pages are pretty rich than all the text that we have. The plan itself, we haven't changed. Now, other than the county engineer making us change this separation here, because originally this came up here and lined up. We wanted this staggered. We wanted to actually ties into what's that? What's the community on the east side? Willow Bend. It's not Willow Bend. What's it? Not Hidden Cove. No, that goes on. Whatever the name of the community is across the street. We know that, but we just anyhow. that, there's really just very, very minor centerline tweaks to meet the county engineer standards. And plans not intended to change.
On the outdoor community market, you said it's gonna be right in that little hot dog spot there. Is that the only place that it's possibly gonna be, or the other?
The entire, it could happen anywhere in the commercial area, it could happen in the parking lots, if we wanted it there, it could happen. We could shut down Market Street or one of the other streets and do it there. Depends on what kind of use and the size. I mean, you go down to Hyde Park down in Cincinnati, which is a delightful place. They have an outdoor festival. They have their farm markets, but they also have music and arts festivals and things like that. They shut down the main square, and it's fantastic. And as the community grows, and when I say the community, I mean Orange Township, not just Evans Farm, I could see us shutting down Market Street. As we shut down for the parade a couple years ago, we shut down Evans Farm Drive. Dan and I talked about it. We have to be a little bit sensitive about how much we walk into our residents' front yards in the commercial area or in the single family area. So the hot dog, it's called Central Park. Central Park is attractive, but it's attractive partly because it's wood and it's green. And as soon as you come in with the market there, you're going to trash it. Last year we hosted a Cars and Coffee, and we have another one scheduled in September. And all the cars, these are gorgeous, rock-dead gorgeous cars. And it's something I've never driven, 4GT or something like that. They're $1 million more in it too. But they back them into the curb on Evanston Drive, and people walk on the street. So you're really not in the front yard of the residence. But if I were a resident, I'd be thrilled to have 3-4 GTs parked in my front yard or right up against the curb, and they're at a diagonal. So we could see uses like that, but they're going to be low impact uses as we grow. And the heavy duty stuff will be there in Market Street. We still have the Oval, which is this area here, which is still planned for movie nights and community concerts and things like that. And that's on the drawing board now. It's great. We have places for that, places for less impactful things too. So that's what our plans are.
I think you asked whether or not you should include it, or not. I guess it's whether or not it should be, but I suppose it probably should be just for the record, just so that it's noted. Was that what your thought was when you asked whether or not
the outdoor community?
Yeah.
Yeah. If it's something that the zoning commission likes, we'll add it in our next submission.
Okay.
Which I suspect once we get some comment, gather all the comments,
I like that.
and staff has comments too that we haven't addressed yet. We'll resubmit probably the next week or so. Get them back before you, and we'll include that if that's something you guys like.
I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I would like to see, what the boundaries should be, and not just physically. I mean, and I'm not saying that it needs to be restricted to a certain area or but more, I guess, what the intent of it is, like how often it would occur, something like that. Like, if there's an idea, or if you guys kind of know that, or have an idea what that could possibly be, once a month or once, every whatever it is, timeline, as well as, when it would have to close or open, or if there's any, restrictions, obviously meeting the guidelines of, the community. If there's, you're obviously not, yeah.
Something I'm just kind of thinking out loud here, but something like a farm market. Delaware has one, Westville has on the sidewalks.
Yeah.
Because it's a twice a week kind of thing.
Yeah.
You don't want to shut the main street down.
Right.
If you're going to have an art show or a music festival or something where you're going to bring in a lot of people within a certain time period. The time period is critical because we have permitted uses that are time restricted. we could do something like that and say, okay, these are the areas we envision for the big events, the movies or the music festivals, or something like that. Yeah. For something like a farm market that's twice a week kind of thing, you don't have to worry about it. It's permitted on the sidewalks, and our sidewalks are plenty wide enough to accommodate them.
Yeah.
But we don't have to worry about shutting down the street, so it's less impactful.
Yeah, and that's good to know. I didn't know if that was
That's a good.
yeah, if you were
something that we'll
thinking about doing that.
more about. Yeah.
Just a couple more comments. So I know the signage comments came in late.
Yes.
Was there anything that was like a major red flag? I would imagine there wasn't. At least
No,
that I saw.
I think, and maybe if you want to pass these on, I have copies, but
We can sit down next day or two. Yeah, time. I know you're the world traveler.
Yeah, I mean, from what I went through them very brief. I would say, some of them, if it's more of a clarification thing or a question, obviously I know you guys can answer them. If there is something in here that possibly you would say, that's not really what we're trying to do. If there was a way to communicate that back before like the next meeting, I don't know if that's something, through an email, if it's like, hey, we're willing to meet all these except for this one.
Sure.
Here's just so we're not going to this next meeting and then it's all going to be brand new stuff. And we're all going to review this, obviously. It came in late. I think.
I apologize, and that's on me because I asked Jeff Beer to review the signage plan. He's kind of our signage guru in the township, and I think his intent of these comments is to ensure that the signage is not excessive or blinding in a way.
Right, blinking lights and whatnot. Speaking of signage, the lighting part that you had discussed of possibly doing like a side light or something, obviously with the residential aspect to this project and everything kind of being pretty close to each other, if there, and I don't know how, this could be achieved, but if there was a way that in the case of a blade sign or something that you have this side lighting on, if there was a way to shield that, so it's obviously illuminating the sign, doing what it's intended for, but not going, through, so.
In the information I've got from lighting reps, they have lenses that are able to cut off the non-useful light off the side.
Yep.
And that's what our intention is.
Perfect. Okay. That's good to know. And the only other thing, so the landscaping, I know you kind of went over that quickly. Is it the same that it was the same that was done on the single family where it was just kind of all taken out and you guys are going to manage that? As far as what species or anything on this?
In regards to the species of street trees, we took that.
Yeah, right.
In regards to the design of individual lots and the individual and selection of street trees, we kept that in our side, and it's pretty much in the architectural standards and it's approved by the town architect.
So in the case that someone comes in with a less desirable species of tree or something the process that they go through, is it going to go through that architectural review? And that's where it would be taken out if you guys aren't. Great. Okay. That's all I have for the commercial. If anybody else?
No, I don't think Michelle ought to be the tree plants and identify which types of trees which, so.
We provided books and things like that, but it's simply not fair.
You already have the
Not a
lighting.
landscape.
You already have the lighting for commercial in your architectural standards, I'm assuming.
Yeah, the one thing we do not have in our architectural standards, as I said, is directional signage. It's, being from Columbus, I can point to a place down in Old German Village, or right next to German Village called Reed's. It was an old restaurant. It had a blade sign that ran just about the height of the 3-story building. It was only about that wide, but it said Reed's all the way down to one downlight at the top isn't going to work, so you have to have lighting on the sides. It wasn't backlit or anything like that, it was just a wood sign. And you have to be able to light it from the side. So formally, according to our zoning text, we're only permitted downlight. And I wasn't going to try to sneak anything by it, so we're just calling it directional signage. And with, as you just mentioned, with cutoffs. So we're not spraying light down the street or in people's eyes. The last thing we want, and I've said this to the city developers, I don't really feel like I'm imposing or saying things wrong, but I do not want the orange glare that's on, what's the parkway that goes in front of Ohio Health. Glen Park, yeah, Glen Park. We're not out for that. You know, we're illuminating corners at intersections. If it's a good sized block, we'll go mid-block. But, and that's exactly how we designed the trade block. So we went corners and then we said, okay, that's a little bit too far. Put one in the center. And we have light islands. I grew up in Linden, and that's exactly how they did Linden. Right off Cleveland Avenue. Corners and one in the middle if it's long enough block. If not, get rid of the one in the middle. And lighting is going to be every bit, for a signage, is going to be every bit as much common sense as that.
So someone's gonna have to maintain your architectural standards after this is completed, up, running, over the next 10 years. Somebody's going to maintain, there'll be people there.
Yeah. I'm not the town architect.
No, I know, but that's what I'm saying, I'm already assuming, I've talked to you guys enough, I know you've got lots of those things written. You're intending, I heard State Street or west of that, great idea, multiple signs. Do what you're proposing here still meet our code, or are any diversions is needed from what's in here versus what's in that?
The most recent thing you talked about, the directional signage as a feature code, because it only allows for dark, everything downlight.
Right.
And Evans didn't really meet our code back in 2015 either, or 2016. So, you know, their signage concept. Yeah.
Yes, okay.
We're kids.
And so that will need to be made for the sign for that type of lighting as well.
And that's why anything like that I could think of that didn't quite meet the code, I listed in here is one of the things we're proposing. It wasn't listed as a divergence, but we can do that.
I personally like it. I've always thought our code in some of the cases was too restrictive.
Yeah.
Signage especially.
Up until this point. And if you look at the built product around the community, the Orange Township, it's pretty nice. And it's hard to legislate nice. And I know it's a quaint or trite thing to say, but if you sit there and you start trying to say every house has to have a peak, and every house has to have 2 windows on the front, it just doesn't compute. In the Orange Township zoning text, for the most part, across the Orange Township community, has done a pretty good job. You guys have done a darn good job interpreting that to make it work. You and all your people before you. And it's hard.
After your time, Tony, is there going to be somebody who's going to maintain these architectural standards?
Yes.
Looking in future, because I know you're going to still be there in 50 years. Their community is.
Oh,
You may
oh,
I won't be here, but your community.
Which brings, that brings up just an interesting question in general. Do you have anyone that independently comes in just to verify that you are sticking with your own standards?
Our town architect is.
Okay. That's what I want.
And the HOA is also involved in this
So
already.
they're, okay.
So there is a continuity as we go forward.
Exactly, that's the point, that's the
That's
better point. Yeah. It's trying to make, yeah, you get continuity with this with decades to follow as this continues to grow and stand.
You would think that, and it works this way sometimes, but we pay the town architect, actually the applicant pays the town architect. But because we hire him, you think he'd say yes to everything we say yes to. And it doesn't work that way. And you know what?
We don't want it.
We don't want it.
We don't want it that way. We got enough to do.
We have, we affectionately call our starting town architect and our reviewer. And one of the things we like, and this comes back from my landscape architecture background, there was a time I worked in a school that called did nothing but military-based design, which you could pull your eyes out. It was just boring. They encouraged us to keep our design talents sharp by moonlighting doing residential stuff. We encourage our town architects to design houses. They have to. Just as a designer, you have to stay sharp, or you get very, I hate to say it, you get very dull, but that's not, pardon the pun. We have two town architects, and both of them are very, very good at residential and quality design residential stuff. And the one who was our previous town architect, Brad Shaw, has built, I don't know if you've seen the one in there that has the black cedar shaped house, and he's got another one going in with the regular, with the natural cedar shape going in on the parade route. Now, he was doing so many designs, he's got 3 or 4 houses in his construction. We brought David Johnson, who was the other town architect. He was the bullpen guy, now he's the starter. And Brad is our reliever. And these two swap back and forth and they trade and they review each other's stuff. If Christine brings the house in and she's designed it, David's going to do it. Brad only reviews David's stuff because he's the reliever. So we have one town architect with a reliever. And we're kind of in the market, not quite yet, but we're kind of in the market looking for another bullpen architect as well. And they don't grow on trees. They're someone that specializes in, and I keep looking at Christine because I know I'm treading on very thin ice here. And Adam's the same way. I know I should just stare at you.
Has nothing to do with that.
But it's something that's critical. It's the essence of the entire community. It's the architecture of the single family. If we screw up on that, the whole community falls apart. And so the quality of the people that we have, the town architects, are every bit as essential. And we need to make sure we have enough opportunity there if one of those guys leaves or moves out of town, which is possible. Right? The young lady from Germany, we need to start thinking about it. If that happens, we need to find a good guy.
He said he wanted to simplify his life so that he became a builder and dated a girl and lived in Germany.
I don't know how complex it was before. We can't talk enough about the town architects and the work they do. Those two and one other fellow with us were the authors of the updated version. And those were the guys we walked down the streets with. It was just a ball walking around because they get it. They interpret for us.
I think that book that you have there is a huge, huge plus. If you're a developer. I know you know that, but I know too many people walking here with developers and don't even know what they're doing. That works out.
If you ever want to, I'll be happy to share a digital copy with you if you want. You need just a paper with the hold down the dog.
Any?
The residents like it too. Yeah.
Yes.
Good.
Any other comments? Commercial? All right. Can I get a motion then that, well, actually, do we have a date?
No, we don't have a date. I think I'd probably want like a week or so to get the comments together from everybody. And Tony, I don't know what your turnaround time is.
So if you get comments in, let's just say a week from today, or
31st.
I think that if we stick to, we don't have anything on the agenda next month, right?
correct.
Okay, so if we were looking at, so the 7th is going to be a trustee meeting because of the holiday. I can't remember if it's the 14th and the 28th as our options. I have to look at our regular calendar.
If you, with Labor Day being the week, 2 weeks from now, if you did the week after that,
The 14th.
yeah, something like that.
Does that work with you all? Or?
Yeah, it works
Okay.
with me.
Still free on my calendar.
Yes.
All right. All right, so can I,
That works. I just wanted to confirm.
okay. Can I get a motion to continue the hearing on September 14th?
And that would be
Yes,
for both
14.
applications?
Yes, for both applications ZON-21-05 and ZON-21-06.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Bellis to continue applications number ZON-21-05, ZON-21-06 to Tuesday, September 14th at 7 p.m. Second by Mr. McNulty. Those voting, Mr. Pahovich,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Bellis,
Yes.
and Mr. Pierce.
Yeah.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks.
It is great to be back.
Also, I'll get you that right. Just this afternoon, the school district sent us a support letter as to the amendment.
Okay.
I want to get that back.
Sounds good. Thank you. So we do have one quick thing. Well, should be quick. The amendment of the Orange Township zoning resolution 2021 RCOD text amendment.
If you want to take one of these, Holly Maddie, our planning consultant who helped us write the overlay district text, did provide a brief summary of the changes proposed. These changes were sparked pretty much by recent trustee meetings, and they're pretty straightforward. Overall, it's prohibiting the use of gas stations in all of the sub areas. We would then define the gas stations more, in addition to defining truck service centers and amending the definition of auto-oriented uses.
This is gas stations in not the commercial sub area, correct?
So this would prohibit gas stations in all of the sub areas.
Oh, all sub areas.
So all parts of 23.
All within the, oh, go ahead, Pete.
In the overlay.
Yeah, in the overlay.
Okay, so I'm a developer and I want to put in a gas station. Can I still do it?
They'd have to go,
You could rezone.
Without bringing in the cloud of the
Correct.
overlay? Okay,
Gotcha.
all right.
So has everybody, well, I mean, I guess we're looking at it now, but
yeah, I think the other question that was raised, are the initial text changes or proposed are really focused on the gas stations, but we didn't know if the commission and the trustees were interested in also doing the same thing to really all our auto-oriented uses. So that would be, a collision repair or a mechanic shop.
No, I'm not interested
Right.
in prohibiting those. I think their use is along 23. I think anything else, and you jump into other areas, it shouldn't be.
Because Pete, wouldn't that also include a car wash too?
Sure, there's also.
Yeah, there's a bunch, and that's, that's a policy decision, obviously, but it was, obviously been brought up, and, but I think in talking with Michelle, there is somewhat of a sense of urgency with this particular text, so it may be beneficial to not look at those other issues right now and then go back, because there are going to be additional items that we look at now that we've gotten a handful through.
You have to write exceptions for it. There's oil change places, there's car washes. I don't like this blanket thing at all. I'm not interested.
I'm sorry, you don't like Dennis?
No, I don't like the blanket use of, hey, we don't really want auto for some reason.
Okay.
And the 23 overlay. I think that's
Okay.
far too I think it's an overreach.
Right. And that's not what this particular text as written does. It was just part of the conversation with Holly as a consultant, but
Yeah.
again, I think given kind of the time-sensitive nature, we don't.
I'm not sure I want to grandfather in
Yeah.
things that are not that old, and all of a sudden you're grandfathered in because you're a lubrication valve. You're grandfathered in because you're a car wash. I don't think I want to.
And there's always, again,
Why-
there's always the ability to rezone to, if necessary, to an existing PD or zoning district, standard zoning district as well. It's just part of the issue is the expedited process of the cloud.
If you're another kind of community and didn't have a road like Route 23 that was the main road through it, if we were a Powell and had a 2-lane road running through, I could see this.
Right.
But due to the nature of Route 23 and how busy it is and the size of the community,
Why is this so critical right now? What, maybe I'm the slow one on the street, but what's driving it?
Some of the recent overlay applications have caused some, I'm trying to say this lately, controversy with the community.
And so obviously with uses, it's a policy decision. And I think this request in front of you is a policy decision that's being given by the trustees.
Okay.
Okay.
The one thing, because I'm not sure how I feel about this, I need to think about it a little more.
Well,
I do know that when we did have one applicant that was for like a gas station, car wash, convenience store, it was very difficult for them to meet the overlay regulations just by their building type. That their building type did not work with the overlay restrictions. And I don't know if it actually saved them any time or not because of that. So that's one of the reasons why I want to think about it more quickly is that it doesn't seem like this building type is suited for the overlay guidelines in the first place.
I don't know if that was the intent of it, but
what I'm talking about.
I don't know if I don't know if that was the intent of it when we were looking at it for those type of uses, but they are able to go through the overlay district at this time.
I mean, they're allowed to,
So,
but it's very difficult because just the standards in the overlay do not necessarily meet that building type. Like a car wash in terms of the facade and, the street and all that other stuff. Oil change, anything like that, that requires lots of lanes.
yeah, and also, Christine, this, what we would do tonight we wouldn't be making a recommendation this evening.
Okay.
We would just.
For a public hearing.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just in a brief summary on this, I think the intent behind this and what the whole overlay resolution, not to put it all into one box, but was creating almost this corridor that's, we don't have this sea of parking or a bunch of a bunch of just, cars lined up or something to where, not to say that, that's how every gas station operates, but I think that was the intent behind this. So it was creating more of this streetscape, if you will, this walkability and this, sense of activity and people walking around and having that up against, or visible from the street. So I think that.
Or perhaps there's better land use than a car lot or.
Yes, exactly.
parking lot.
Exactly. So simply put, yes, that's exactly right.
I'm sorry.
So, I mean, I think it's obviously worth the discussion. And tonight, like Michelle said, we're just voting to initiate the conversation or
Okay.
to
I'm like, I have no problem initiating the
Yeah,
Yes.
conversation, but my mind hasn't clearly come
Sure.
up with a conclusion yet or a course of action.
Understood. And also, we are trying to rewrite our zoning resolution. I'm still hoping to aim for this fall as a kickoff, and I think that's an opportunity where we can dive into each chapter and kind of tweak the remaining part of this district.
Have we selected someone yet, or is that still?
We're really close. I was just working out the contract, and that should be coming soon.
Well, with that said, I will.
Do you want to do it for the next September 14th? Because this shouldn't. For the same date as
Yeah.
Evans Farm?
Yeah.
Okay.
We can do that. But-
Let me ask, what's the purpose of, I can see the purpose of the conversation among the zoning members and voting for it. What is the purpose to be gained if you open it up to the public?
We have to.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I get that, but
Seems like they would-
does that still mean, I'm not opposed to public, I'm really not, so my next thing is not being opposed to it. But would that be required for this? Is the public requirement?
There's any text changes to the zoning resolution does require this type,
Okay,
this type of process.
Public hearing,
okay,
a text amendment requires that people be given the opportunity
Okay.
to speak it.
fine, then we have to do it, let's do it.
Yeah.
And we
That's
did-
all good,
Yeah, we published a notice for this, and I
Okay.
mean, it was open.
all good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're changing the zoning code, so.
Yeah, actually, when you read the way the code is set up, or the Ohio Revised Code is set up, they treat text amendments in the same category as rezonings of 10 parcels or less, in terms of the hearing process.
Okay, if we have to do that, that's.
Yeah.
All good.
All right, so I will make a motion by Adam Polhovich to initiate the amendment to the Orange Township zoning resolution and to the set of the public hearing date as of September 14th, 2021 for the 2021 RCOD text amendment number 1, Article 20.
So moved.
Second.
Well, actually, I think Adam made that
Adam
motion.
made
All
the
done.
motion, so.
Okay, so Dennis is second. Okay, got it.
You can just say.
Sorry.
Seconded.
Okay.
You're too opposed.
We're
Motion.
open for discussion.
Yep. Motion made by Mr. Pahovich to initiate an amendment to the Orange Township zoning resolution and set public hearing date for the text amendments as discussed. Second by Mr. McNulty. Those voting, Mr. Pahovich,
Yes.
Mr. McNulty,
Yes.
Mr. Bellis,
Yes.
and Mr. Pierce.
Yeah.
Motion carries.
Great.
That's all I have.
That's it. Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.